Okay. Too small. No good. Better. Okay. Come on. Okay, there we go. Now we got to Okay, it's been about 3 days since I poured the mold. You can tell we had a little bit of leakage down here, but not much compared to what I have done. That's why I always handy to put in something that'll catch it. But got a little issue in here, got a crack in the top of it. You know, this stuff I use is supposed to be like a 4 to 6 inch stuff for the deep pour. And of course that's well over that 6 inches. There's so much of it, it just got warm, shrunk, cracked. So we're gonna open it up and see what it is. It still may be salvageable to do whatever I'm gonna do with it. All right, let me open her up now for you. Alright, well, while there ain't a real good way to do this that I know of yet, we're just gonna cut her open. This stuff cuts pretty easy, pretty strong, holds pretty easy. And before it come apart pretty easy. Well, but I messed it up, I wrapped it inside out. You'll notice this stuff has a shiny side and a cloth side. I put the cloth side in instead of the shiny side in. If I would put the shiny side in, it would have come apart a lot easier. But that's my mistake. You live and you learn. Now let's see if I can't get it out of. Hey, there we go. That worked pretty good. And I got my tenon on there. I think what I'm going to do is just clean my tenon up pretty good in that base with a sander. Get rid of this excess, and I'll just stick it on the lathe and see what we can't do with it there. Just clean it up and see what it is and see what I'm going to make with it. I don't even know what I'm going to make with it yet. Here. Alright guys, we're going to work on turning this now. It's 40 degrees on a January day here in Louisiana, kind of cool outside, so it's a better day for the big turning than it is the pins because I ain't got to worry about getting my fingers wet. But I got my tenon marked, the center. I got the center marked a little bit off on the pine cone there. I want to chuck this up in the lathe and we'll go ahead and freshen up that tenon, clean up the bottom. Then we'll flip it around, grab it by the tenon and clean up the outside and figure out what I'm going to make with it. Alright, well I decided to clean up the outside a little bit. We'll get rid of some of the out of balance and vibration. And then I'll work on the tenon so I can flip it around. Alright, now you can see I got some chip out, some places where it shrank. Don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to get my tenon cut and we're going to turn it around and go from there. Alright, I got her all chucked up in my fit. Got it pretty balanced. Now I can turn up my speed some. Got me a new tip on here, and maybe we'll get rid of some of that breakout. Don't know what we'll do about them holes yet, but we're gonna work it down and see what we find down underneath. Okay, it's cleaning up pretty good. I'm still gonna have some holes I'm probably gonna have to fill with something, but a lot of the chip out is coming from probably two things. Improper mixture. I think my last mixture, I mixed it with a little bit too much hardener, and that causes it to get too hard and do a lot of that chip out, because this up here turns it a lot easier. And also when it hardens, or when it hardens up quicker, it left me some holes in there. But I'll clean that up with something. But just to let y'all know, if you haven't turned any acrylic before, and you're getting ready to get prepared, a lot of people have the shop vac systems, and even though I'm in a kind of a outside open area, that still would be kind of handy in this. But I'm going to turn it on down closer to shape, and then I'll get back in touch with you. Okay, getting quite a mess here, but making a little bit further along. I poured that stuff way too much, way too quick. So now that I've gotten this far along, I'm gonna have to take it out. We'll take it back up to my building, and it'll take some time, but I'm gonna have to mix up some more epoxy and fill in all these holes. That way it'll look good whenever I get done with it. You know, even got a crack there, but I'm hoping all that epoxy will cover that up. Let me go work on that. We'll get back in touch with you. All right, I got some old just general purpose epoxy, and it's a two-part, mix it 50-50. This is what I use for a lot of my bowls when they get cracks. Yeah. Measure that in our cups. This stuff here is pretty thick. But this stuff cures to the touch in a day's time. You have about a 30-minute working time to it. What I'm hoping to do is I'll get some of these holes filled up now, and maybe this evening I can do a few more. I can roll it over, pour it in there. But I've dealt with filling in holes in wood quite a bit. A lot of the wood I use is just get off the place here, and it's a lot of oak. I let it sit up so long, ends up getting bugs and worms and all that kind of stuff in it, and they got all kind of holes, and I'll turn them and fill in a lot of that. Or either if you're turning something and wet, you let it dry out and you get a bunch of cracks in it, well, you can fill in the cracks with this and finish turning it. It isn't near as expensive as a lot of your deep epoxies. This is just a general purpose or a tabletop epoxy, and it'll go up to, I don't know, I've had it up to ½ inch thick or more and never cracked. If you go up much more than that and try and fill in clear holes, then you're probably going to get a crack. I've used it on some cedar benches, filling in kind of rotten areas. It hardens that rotten area up pretty good. I'm just going to put a little bit of this. We don't need much. Just enough to give it some color. Hopefully it'll blend in pretty good. Working with imperfect stuff, I've learned you ain't going to get a perfect look on the end. I don't strive for perfection. I just work with what the Lord gives me and fill in the holes and do what I can. The imperfections is kind of like the imperfections in people. That's what makes us all different and makes us special. All right, it's going to be pretty close. Let me get here. I got some new yard birds out there. Y'all probably hear that's them stinking guineas. But as I was blowing air through this outside, you could hear it blowing all the way through some of these holes. So I got, this is a floor tape, what they call it. Get it off Amazon, it's about 10 bucks a roll. It's a vinyl tape that stretches real good. So as long as you got a good surface, it adheres real good, and I'm able to fill in a lot of these holes, hopefully without losing too much. But I always put a catch tray. Over here you see a bowl or a block of wood. I'm filling in a bunch of holes in it, and I tend to make a mess a lot of times. So the better, always put a catch tray. That way you can catch most of your mess anyway. These little plastic trays I got down here from the dollar store, they had them on sale 30 cents a piece. I bought every one they had because they work great for this. And they will actually, all the epoxy does not adhere to it. You can break it loose. You can break the super glue loose pretty easy. So if you had something like one of my blocks of wood for bowls here that was leaking and you just glued it down to it, it would still be able to come off. I know from experience that because I have done that. Looks like we got some pretty big voids in there. Okay, I got one almost filled up. All right, I'm going to keep working on this, and as I go, I'm just going to, as one area cures, I'm going to just peel off some tape and roll it around and work on the other areas. When I get it all done, I'll let you know what it looks like. All right, got all my holes and cracks filled up, I think. Looks pretty good, so now I'm going to continue turning it and see what we come up with and see if we find anything else underneath. About 40 degrees out here today with wind blowing about 30 miles an hour, so I may not be at it too long. We'll just see. Well, there's a big hole popped up and another one. Yeah. I will get it down closer to size now that I know the majority of it is filled up, and then we'll worry about them holes there. Sometimes with these cheap machines, you have difficulties, but it's nothing a hammer won't fix. Oh, good and center. Alright, that's one reason why I always do my in center before I finish out my outside, because when you're working with old equipment it moves sometimes. So I want to go ahead and straighten up the outside and get it running true again, then I'll go fill in my holes. Alright, time to go fill in some more holes. Okay, I got her all filled in again. I got her set up on the lathe. We're gonna try it one more time. I may have a few holes, but the small ones I'm not too worried about. I just don't want any of the big ones. Now if you'll notice while I'm cutting, if you lay this thing flat like this, you're gonna get more breakout. If you turn it at an angle, you tend to have less breakout when you're cutting this acrylic. So I'm gonna rough it, get all this rough stuff down, and then I'm gonna try and smooth it out and we'll see what we got. Alright, gonna try something new. I've been using epoxy all along to try and fill these holes. Now they're just some small ones. I'm gonna try some glue. We'll see how well that works and maybe if I can get it good enough to get it sanded and cleaned up. Alright, I'm gonna give it a few minutes, let all this super glue cure. It cures from the outside in, so I'll give it a few minutes and then I'll touch that up one more time, see if it's ready to sand. Well, that didn't work. Alright, I still got my holes, and the more I turn, the more holes I find. If I fill them in, I get them cleaned up, and I'm liable to find some more. So I'm going to sand it up right there and work on a finish right there, just to see if that's going to be what kind of finish I'm going to use. I'm going to call this my experimental piece. Experiment on the odd and end stuff, because it ain't turning out the way I wanted to. But I wanted to go ahead and, oh, I got to do some cleanup up here, looks like. And then I'll get her sanded up. That's good enough. Let's go to sanding. It shouldn't take long to sand this piece down. It's gonna look okay, I guess. Alright, I guess I'll take it off of here and clean it up a little bit more. Get my powder off of there, and then I'll see what kind of finish I want to try on it. Alright, I got my handy dandy turning system fixed up here. Make it a lot easier. That way I can just turn it with a drill there. If this works good, I'm going to work on getting me another motor that has a speed control, a low speed motor to finish this stuff with. But I'm going to try that for this one right here. And I'm going to take some of this fast set artist stuff. This is stuff they use for them tumblers. It's a 2-part, and it's a 1 to 2 mix. I'll take that, mix it up, and put it on here and see how it works out. All right, I want to talk about a few things of this project now that we got it done. We started out with one of these Coulter pine cones and a block of wood and some acrylic, and we ended up with this here. Now, I made some mistakes. First of all, I didn't have to cut my tenon in my block of wood to begin with. That was kind of a waste of time because acrylic got in the tenon and I had to recut it anyway. So if you just start off with your block of wood, that'll work good. Also, if you make your wrap too big, you're going to have to pour too much acrylic. So get a good measurement when you make your wrap to wrap that up. And for your bottom block, where you can get everything in center and use the least amount of acrylic as you need to, so you get the proper, not only the proper cure, but you could save money that way, because you don't want to buy a bunch of acrylic that you don't have to. And speaking of acrylic, the biggest problem I had on this project was pouring acrylic. I used some 4-inch acrylic, but as you can tell, this is probably about 10 to 12 inches. So that's a lot more than 4 inches. And I poured it, I had 3 different pots I mixed up, poured it all, one right after another. In order to alleviate that problem, what I'm going to do next time is I'm going to pour one pour, then wait 6 or 8 hours, and pour another pour, wait 6 or 8 hours, and pour another pour. Because when you get too much of that acrylic in there at one time, it heats up and it starts curing, and as this stuff cures, it shrinks. The faster it cures, the faster it shrinks. It's going to pull apart and leave holes in the acrylic like we've left it in this one. And even though I've filled holes 2 different times, every time you turn some, you're still finding holes. So what I did to try and finish it, I stuck it on my little homemade turning tool here where I could turn it by hand, and I spun it around and put a I don't have it right here, and put a fast curing epoxy like they use on the tumblers while I spun it, and that made it a pretty good finish, and it hid some of the mistakes. Now you can still see some of the dimples and some of the holes in there, but another thing you want to watch out for is small stuff like this right here when you're pouring that acrylic at the very end. I sat here and I spun it for about an hour, close to an hour by hand, just very slowly, to keep from getting any runs in it. And then I had other stuff to do. It seemed tacky enough like it was going to hold. Well, when I come back a few hours later, I had a couple little drip spots in there. So what I've done is I went out and ordered me a slow speed motor and a coupling that I can put on my little shaft where I can set it up at just 2 or 3 RPM if I wanted to, and just let it run for a few hours while that cures, and that'll prevent that from happening. But this again was a test piece. I've never done this before. I picked up a bunch of these pine cones in California and wanted to try it. So I've got one test piece done. Now those things I just covered is what I'm going to change to do the next one I do, and it should work out a lot better and take a lot less time to do, to be honest with you. Because when you go back and have to fill in all them holes and then return, fill in holes, turn, fill in holes, turn, fill in holes, turn, and once you get a hole filled all the way around, go back outside, turn it all down, then you got more holes, and doing that back and forth, and it's an ongoing ordeal whenever you don't have a good pour on your acrylic. So if you can get a good pour on the acrylic where you don't have any voids in there, then you'll save yourself a lot of time. So that's what I want to do on the next one. But if you like the video or have any comments, know of any way I can improve, just let me know. Click the like button and subscribe and leave me a comment. We'll see y'all in the next one.